What if a suicide note wasn't a letter, but a cassette tape? It was the music Helmut Köllen gave up everything to create, and in a cruel twist of fate, it may also have been the thing that killed him. At 27, he had it all: an angelic voice, a world-famous rock band, millions of records sold. But he threw it all away for one thing: artistic freedom. This is the story of the 27 Club's most obscure ghost, a man who died not of drugs or alcohol, but perhaps of his own music, a tragedy of silence. To understand Helmut Köllen, you must first understand the sound of a nation desperate for a new identity. The West Germany of the 1960s was a land of contradictions, rebuilt from rubble into an economic powerhouse, yet haunted by the suffocating silence of a parent's generation, unwilling to confront the past. This chasm fueled a cultural explosion. Young Germans needed their own sound, free from their parents' history and distinct from the Anglo-American pop flooding their radios. This search for a new artistic language split into two paths. One was the radical deconstructive experimentation the British press labeled krautrock. The other looked back to Germany's own grand traditions of classical music. This was the birth of German progressive rock, and no band embodied its symphonic ambition more successfully than Triumvirat. The group was the brainchild of Jürgen Fritz, a classically trained keyboard virtuoso with a vision to create a German answer to Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. With the powerful drumming of Hans Bathelt, Fritz had the foundation for his complex orchestral rock. He was just missing one crucial piece: a voice and a melodic anchor to give his music a soul. He found both in Helmut Köllen. Born in Cologne on March 2, 1950, Helmut literally grew up inside of music. His father was a church organist and choir director, and Helmut's childhood was scored by the majestic sound of Bach's fugues thundering from massive pipe organs and the sacred melodies of ancient hymns. His home was not just a house, it was a temple where music, connecting the divine and the human, was a constant presence. While his peers were discovering rock and roll on the radio, Helmut was sitting quietly in the pews of his father's church, absorbing complex harmonies and the rigid structures of counterpoint into his very being. It was an imprint that would define his musical DNA forever. This environment shaped him into a quiet, introverted child, but within him a fiery musical passion was raging. He received almost no formal training. Instead, he became his own master. With a guitar and bass in hand, he would lock himself in his room, practicing for hours on end. His fingers instinctively sought out the complex melodic lines he had heard in his father's organ playing, creating his own melodies that went far beyond the simple scales of blues and rock and roll. His voice was his most wondrous discovery. Without a single lesson in vocal technique, he learned to sing purely from instinct and feeling. Because it was untrained, his voice was pure. Because it was unadorned, it was intensely powerful. His high, slender tone carried a profound sense of sorrow and longing, and it possessed a sharp, cutting edge that could slice through the most complex instrumental arrangement. By his late teens, Helmut was already a well-known figure in Cologne's burgeoning music scene. He cut his teeth in several local bands, most notably a group called Tricolone, honing his skills on stage night after night. He didn't say much on stage, he let his instruments do the talking. His bass playing was more than a rhythmic foundation. It was a lead voice, singing its own melody throughout the songs. In stark contrast to his quiet, unassuming offstage demeanor, the moment he stepped up to the microphone, he was commanding. His voice would cut through the air of the small clubs, piercing directly into the hearts of the audience. The rumors of this prodigious talent inevitably reached Jürgen Fritz, who was tirelessly searching for the final piece of his musical puzzle. In a quiet, unassuming 20-year-old from his own city, Fritz wouldn't just find a brilliant singer and bassist. He would find his perfect musical alter ego, the voice destined to carry his grand symphonies to the world. While his foundational musical language was classical, as a teenager he fell in love with the melodic songcraft of British bands like the Beatles. He began to fuse the emotional directness of pop with the harmonic complexity he had absorbed in his youth, but his true instrument, the one that set him apart, was his voice. It was a thing of rare and startling beauty. A high, pure, and powerful tenor, it possessed a clarity that was almost unheard of in the often gruff world of rock music. It was a voice devoid of affectation, capable of conveying both immense power and a tender, almost fragile vulnerability. When Jürgen Fritz heard that voice, he knew he had found the final piece of his puzzle. Helmut Köllen's arrival in Triumvirat in 1971 was a pivotal moment for the German progressive rock band, introducing a new dimension to their sound that would soon propel them to international acclaim. The trio, comprising Jürgen Fritz on keyboards, Helmut Köllen on vocals and bass, and Hans Bartelt on drums, released their debut album, Mediterranean Tales, Across the Waters, in 1972. This record served as a bold, if somewhat uneven, introduction to the band's potential. Brimming with ambition, it fused the raw power of heavy rock with intricate, classically inspired interludes, highlighting Fritz's virtuosic keyboard work and the band's readiness to push artistic boundaries. Tracks like 11 Kids showcase the group's early promise, with Köllen's powerful soaring vocals acting as an emotional anchor for Fritz's complex layered arrangements. His expressive voice brought a human warmth to the band's cerebral compositions, while his melodic bass lines danced deftly around the keyboard pyrotechnics, adding a dynamic counterpoint that signaled the potent chemistry forming within the group. Although Mediterranean Tales was not a commercial titan, it was a crucial proving ground that established Triumvirat as a band capable of rivaling the giants of progressive rock. That potential was fully realized with their 1974 release, Illusions on a Double Dimple, a work of breathtaking ambition that announced Triumvirat's true arrival on the global stage. A monumental leap forward, the album was conceived as a single, continuous musical piece split into two sprawling suites that spanned both sides of the vinyl. Structured like a classical symphony, yet infused with the untamed energy of rock, Illusions embodied the progressive rock ethos at its zenith, weaving a complex allegorical narrative about the deceptions of life and the quest for meaning. Such an audacious concept might have collapsed under its own weight for a lesser band, devolving into pretension or incoherence. However, Triumvirat's technical mastery and cohesive vision held it together, with each member contributing to a sound that was both intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant. Jürgen Fritz's keyboards provided the album's sonic foundation, ranging from thunderous organ chords to delicate piano passages, while Hans Bartelt's precise, inventive drumming drove the dynamic shifts. Yet it was Helmut Köllen who emerged as the album's linchpin. His voice served as the emotional through line, guiding listeners through the labyrinthine musical complexity. The album opens with the frenetic, carnivalesque energy of Mr. 10%, a track that immediately captivates the listener with its swirling keyboards and propulsive rhythm. Köllen's vocals enter with a newfound confidence, his delivery both commanding and nuanced as he navigates the song's intricate changes in mood and tempo. His voice capable of soaring to operatic heights or softening to a tender whisper, lent a human dimension to the album's philosophical themes, making the abstract narrative feel immediate and relatable. Tracks such as Illusions and Maze further demonstrated his vocal range, with Köllen effortlessly transitioning between moments of introspective melancholy and powerful anthemic declarations. His bass playing was also a standout, offering melodic counterpoints to Fritz's keyboard flourishes, while maintaining a rock-solid foundation with Bathelt's drumming. The album's sweeping finale, with its dramatic crescendos and intricate instrumental interplay, felt like the culmination of the band's collective vision, with Köllen's voice rising above the musical tumult to deliver a cathartic resolution. Illusions on a Double Dimple captured the attention of Capitol Records in the United States, which saw in Triumvirat the potential to be the next Emerson, Lake and Palmer, no small praise, given ELP's dominance in the progressive rock scene. Against all odds, this complex philosophical suite by a German band began to gain traction on American FM radio, a remarkable feat for such an unabashedly ambitious work. Tracks like Mr. 10% and Lucky Girl became unlikely radio hits, their infectious energy and memorable hooks resonating with audiences despite their unconventional structures. The album's success marked a turning point, transforming Triumvirate from a regional act into a band on the cusp of international stardom. It was a testament to their ability to balance technical virtuosity with accessibility, crafting music that was at once intellectually challenging and emotionally compelling. If Illusions was the breakthrough, their next album, Spartacus, was the masterpiece that solidified their legacy. For their 1975 masterpiece, they turned to history, crafting a full-blown concept album about one of the most iconic rebels of all time, Spartacus. The story of the Thracian gladiator who led a slave uprising against the might of the Roman Empire was a perfect fit for the epic scale of their music. It was a timeless tale of freedom against oppression, a theme that resonated deeply in the anti-establishment atmosphere of the mid-1970s. Triumvirate's Spartacus, 1975, is a defining progressive symphonic rock concept album, the sound of a trio playing with real authority. Keyboardist Jürgen Fritz shapes music that fuses rock drive with classically inflected melody. Drummer Hans Bathelt underpins it with muscular, articulate playing and contributes the lyrics. At the forefront is Helmut Köllen, lead vocal and bass with some guitar, whose bass lines are unusually melodic. They often act as a second lead voice, weaving around Fritz's keyboard figures with both poise and power. And his vocal performance is exceptionally pure and powerful. He embodies the character of Spartacus, his voice filled with defiance on the thunderous opener, the capital of power, and with a weary resolve on the walls of doom. But the album's emotional core, the track that would become his signature anthem, is the stunningly beautiful ballad, The Sweetest Sound of Liberty. Over a gentle piano melody, Helmut's voice is heartbreakingly pure, a moment of profound vulnerability and longing amidst the chaos of war. It is a song of love and loss, a quiet prayer from a man who knows he may not see the dawn. It is, without question, one of the most beautiful vocal performances in the history of progressive rock. The world agreed. Spartacus was a massive international success. It soared to number 27 on the Billboard charts in the United States, a staggering achievement for a German band. They launched a hugely successful American tour, playing to thousands of adoring fans. They were on the covers of music magazines, their faces beamed into living rooms, on television shows. They had done it. A trio from Cologne had created a work of art that conquered the world. From the outside, it was a picture of absolute triumph. But inside the machine, the gears were grinding, and a deep fundamental conflict was about to tear it all apart. For while Helmut Köllen was singing about a slave who broke his chains, he was beginning to feel like a prisoner himself. The rarely discussed truth of Triumvirat, the secret that festered behind the grand facade of their music, was its rigid power structure. Despite the name, this was not a collaboration of equals. Triumvirat was and always had been Jürgen Fritz's band. He was the composer, the producer, and the unquestioned leader. While Fritz was the absolute musical architect, the lyrics for their classic albums were primarily written by drummer Hans Bartheldt. Fritz's vision was absolute, a fact Bartheldt himself confirmed with startling frankness years later. Triumvirat was always Jürgen Fritz. Helmut and I, we were the sidemen. We were engaged to play his music. Imagine the psychological weight of that statement. At the very moment when your face is on an album cover being sold in stores, from Tokyo to Topeka, at the very moment when thousands of fans are singing along to your voice, you understand that you are in essence a hired hand. Helmut Köllen was a tremendously gifted songwriter in his own right. His musical heart beat to a different rhythm than Fritz's. He was a natural melodist, a lover of the concise, emotionally direct songcraft of the Beatles and Paul McCartney. He had notebooks filled with his own songs, his own ideas, but there was no place for them in the epic classical world of Triumvirat. The band's structure had no room for a second composer. This creative suffocation was the central tragedy of his career. He was the golden voice that brought Fritz's epic visions to life, but he was not permitted to have a vision of his own. On the long, grueling American tours, this frustration began to curdle into a profound sense of alienation. He was living the life of a rock star, but the music that was making him famous felt less and less like his own. He was the face and voice of Spartacus, the ultimate rebel, while feeling creatively powerless. The irony was almost too much to bear. He was faced with a choice that few artists ever have to make at such a level. He could stay, continuing to cash the checks and play the part of the rock star in a band that was poised for even greater success, while his own creative impulses were slowly extinguished. Or he could make a decision that by any rational measure was an act of career suicide. He could walk away from the fame, the money, and the security and take a terrifying leap into the unknown, all for the chance to be his own man. In late 1975, with Spartacus still riding high on the charts and the band's future looking brighter than ever, Helmut Köllen did the unthinkable. He quit. The decision stunned the progressive rock community. To fans, it was incomprehensible. Jürgen Fritz, though surely stunned, moved quickly to replace him, recruiting a new English bassist and vocalist to maintain the band's international appeal. Triumvirat would continue, but for the legions of fans who had fallen in love with the classic lineup, it felt as if the soul of the band had departed with Helmut. Helmut returned to Germany, not with anger, but with a palpable sense of relief and a renewed sense of purpose. He was finally free. He immediately threw himself into new projects. He briefly joined a hard rock outfit called Jail, which featured his close friend, drummer Herman Rarebell, who would soon go on to achieve worldwide fame with the Scorpions. But Jail was a temporary stop. His real focus, the project that consumed him, was his own solo album. He converted his garage into a home studio and spent the next year and a half tirelessly working. He was the master of his own musical destiny for the first time in his life. He wrote the songs, played most of the instruments, and sang with a freedom and passion that had been suppressed for years. Friends who were privy to these sessions described the music as a revelation. It was a complete departure from the symphonic epics Triumvirat. This was the music of his heart, beautifully crafted melodic pop rock, rich with harmony, and filled with personal, introspective lyrics. It was the sound of an artist joyfully, painstakingly introducing himself to the world. He was assembling the master tapes, poised to reintroduce himself to the world on his own terms. He was ready to show the world who Helmut Köllen really was. He would never get the chance. On May 3, 1977, the life of Helmut Köllen, the former vocalist and bassist of Triumvirat, came to a tragic and untimely end, casting a shadow over his remarkable contributions to progressive rock. Just 18 months after parting ways with the band that had propelled him to international recognition, Köllen was navigating the challenges of a solo career, driven by a relentless passion to forge his own musical path. On that fateful day, he retreated to his garage in Cologne, Germany, a space he had transformed into a creative sanctuary where he could immerse himself in his work. There, he sat in his car to listen to the master tapes of his debut solo album, a project that represented the culmination of his artistic ambitions. To keep warm in the chilly spring air, he left the car's engine running, unaware of the silent danger accumulating around him. As he became absorbed in the music he had poured his heart into, the garage filled with colorless, odorless carbon monoxide. The toxic gas, imperceptible to Köllen, claimed his life before he could realize the peril. His death at the age of 27 was officially ruled a tragic accident, a devastating loss that left the music world grappling with an unanswerable question. What might have been had Köllen's talent been given more time to flourish? The master tapes, a testament to his creative vision, remained unfinished, a poignant reminder of a life and career cut short. Yet, the specific details of his death elevate it to a haunting legend. He died while completely immersed in his own art. This single fact creates a profound ambiguity. Was it a cruel irony where the music that was his life's focus inadvertently distracted him from his own survival? Or was it a conscious final communion, a choice to be enveloped by the purest expression of his soul at the very end? We will never know for sure. What is certain is that Helmut's end defied the typical rock and roll cliches. He wasn't lost to drugs or excess, but died in the quiet solitude of his workspace, in the middle of the creative act. As a result, he remains one of the most obscure and spectral members of the 27 Club. His tragedy, one of silent artistic principle, not public self-destruction. The greatest tragedy is that he died not at his peak, but in the very process of being reborn as an artist, having walked away from fame in pursuit of something true. His posthumously released album, prophetically titled You Won't See Me, became a cruel, self-fulfilling prophecy.